Good evening and a warm welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, other people may film, record, post on social media or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch off your microphones when you're not speaking. And I'd also like to remind everybody here in whatever capacity of the importance of treating this meeting, the process, the decision, and all of those who are taking part in it with respect both during and following the meeting. My name is Councillor Rex Walker. I'm the chairman of the committee. To my left, Councillor Andy Erdevine, the vice chair. Officers with us this evening, Andrew Cullen, planning manager, Charlotte Thompson, area planning officer, and Rachel Clack, the borough solicitor. So moving on to the first item of the agenda, apologies for absence.
There are no apologies for absence.
Thank you. So declarations of interest. Councillor Calvert first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to make the following declaration. I declare that my Forest Pro membership is a non-pecuniary interest, and I've reflected on whether this affects my ability to maintain an open mind in my decision making, and I've concluded that it does not. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mallender, please.
Thank you, Chair. Back in March 2020, this application was sent in 2019 in November, but in March 2020 I happened to be deputy mayor and was therefore not on the planning committee, and I knew I wouldn't be on the planning committee, if at all. Thank you for putting me back on it, but I wouldn't be until at least late May 2021, and in fact, because it was COVID, I did 2 years of mayor. I wasn't back on planning until May 2022. One would think that the planning committee would have long since discussed and made a decision on this matter, rather than it coming to committee over 5 years later, when I must admit I had forgotten that I had made that objection. So I'm well aware that having expressed an opinion publicly, I'm not allowed to speak or vote at committee. And I therefore will be speaking as Secretary of Lady Bay Community Association, because Councillor Penny Gowland has very kindly allowed me a few minutes of her allocated time as an objector. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too wish to declare a non-pecuniary personal interest in the evening substantive item. I hold a Nottingham Forest membership and regularly attend matches. I've carefully reflected on this and considered any impact of this on my ability to approach decision making on this item with an open mind, and concluded that this interest is not prejudicial, and I will therefore participate in the discussion, debate and decision making process. I don't think there are any others, so the minutes of the last meeting, are we happy to approve those as an accurate record of the meeting? All those in favour? Okay. Anybody against? They're going to be done. And so we move on to why we're really here, and that is to consider a hybrid planning application comprising a full planning application for the redevelopment of the Peter Taylor stand, including the demolition of existing buildings and structures, a new public realm replacement club shop, car parking and associated works, and outline planning permission for up to 170 residential units, including flexible uses at ground floor. And I'll hand over first to Mr. Cullen to introduce the item, who will then pass on to Ms. Thompson, who's going to give us the full presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So members will note the late item representations that have been circulated, of which further comments in support and objection to the scheme have been received. All of these have been considered either in the committee report originally or as part of the late representations themselves. You will also note the clarification around the conservation comments and that the boathouse to be demolished is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset. However, the benefits that the scheme brings far outweighs the loss of this non-designated heritage asset in this case. The wording of condition 45 is also recommended to be updated, and that's just to refer to the correct condition number within the actual wording. So that would be condition 44 as opposed to 43. And just to confirm to members that in the heads of terms document at the end of the report, NCC refers to Nottinghamshire County Council in all of those cases and not Nottingham City Council. So just as a bit of a context before I hand over to Charlotte, this application was originally received in November 2019, previously considered by the Planning Committee in July 2022, where members resolved to grant planning permission subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Since the Planning Committee resolved that in July, officers have worked closely with the applicant and all relevant stakeholders to finalise the Section 106 agreement, which is now agreed, and it's actually being circulated for signatures as well. So therefore, if members resolve to grant permission, the Section 106 can then be legally completed. However, given the extended passage of time that has elapsed since the original committee resolution, and in the interests of sound decision making, it is considered necessary to return the application to Planning Committee for a fresh consideration and resolution by the committee. A set of updated technical reports and information was submitted earlier this year to address the updated policy and legal considerations, following which a full reconsultation was undertaken. This is to ensure that any material changes since July 2022 are fully considered. The actual proposal itself, in terms of the built form proposed and type and nature of development that is for consideration, has not changed over this period of time, and it is the same as previously reported to Planning Committee in July 2022. The main two things to note, however, is that the enabling link between the stand development and the residential scheme has been removed. That is except for the plaza, which is required to be completed prior to occupation of the residential scheme. As a result of this update, the viability position on the residential scheme has been further reviewed and resulted in a significantly improved position since the scheme was reported to Planning Committee in 2022. Previously, the residential scheme proposed a contribution of £430,000 and no affordable housing. However, now the residential scheme proposes a fully compliant set of developer contributions which meet the relevant seal tests, totalling £1.25 million. That is in line with the independent viability review outcomes, and this figure also includes an affordable housing commuted sum of £31,917. That is in addition to the total contributions agreed in relation to the replacement stand, which totals 1.74 million, and all of that is detailed in the committee report. So that was just, I wanted to provide a bit of context in terms of the updates to the scheme and the benefits of the proposal significantly improved since the application was first reported to Planning Committee. And I'll hand over to Charlotte now to run through the detail and the assessment.
Thank you, Andrew, and good evening, everybody. I've tried to condense this presentation so it's as short as possible, whilst also covering the key considerations. I appreciate that the report that's been circulated is very lengthy, and you will have all reviewed this in detail. So you should all be familiar with the site by now, but this relates to the Nottingham Forest Stadium, which sits adjacent the River Trent in West Bridgford. The application before you is a hybrid planning application, which is basically a combination of a full planning application and an outline application in one. And there are three key elements to this. So the first two are the replacement Peter Taylor stand and the new public plaza that you can see here, and that's part of the full application. And then the outline application, which is for the new residential development here. And I'll move on to these in a bit more detail now. So the full application in this case relates to the demolition of the existing Peter Taylor stand and the erection of a replacement stand, which you can see on your screen here. The proposed replacement stand would include further associated facilities, including a club shop and hospitality and conferencing facilities. It would accommodate 10,000 spectators, which would be an increase of 5,000 seats when compared to the existing stand. To facilitate these works, the existing club shop, Champion Centre, associated outbuildings and the Britannia Boathouse are proposed to be demolished. Just got a view of the internal of the stand there. For context, the club shop would be located to the bottom left-hand corner here and would abut Trantside North. The stand would also contain replacement changing rooms, physio rooms, and all of the other facilities you would expect of a Premiership club. The full element of the application would also include a new public realm, which would provide a public plaza to be used by both pedestrians and vehicles. The public plaza would provide a key pedestrian route from Pavilion Road to Trantside North and significantly increase permeability for pedestrians using the site. In order to facilitate the plaza works, the majority of the car parking provision in front of the Peter Taylor stand would be lost, but 35 car parking spaces would remain at the front of the stand, and a new coach parking area that you can see here on the screen would be provided. The other existing car parks to the north-east of the stadium would remain unaffected by the proposals. The principal access of the site would remain from Pavilion Road, as you can see down here, although the gatehouse and the security gates would be replaced and a new electrical substation would be erected. And you can see that here. So this is the new entrance and this would be the new substation. So I'll move on to the outline element of the application now. The application seeks outline consent for the erection of a 13-storey residential apartment block comprising of up to 170 units with commercial units at ground floor level that you can see here. It's important to highlight that the matters sought to be considered at this stage are the access, layout and scale of the proposed development, with landscaping and appearance being reserved for future consideration. The proposed apartment block has been designed to have an L-shaped layout, and the parameter plans that have been provided, which you can see on your screen here, confirm that the maximum height of the building would be 40 metres above ground level. The commercial units at ground floor level would front the new public plaza, and to the rear of the building would be a private courtyard which would include private amenity areas, car parking and cycle provision. Off-street parking provision would also be provided within the first floor, and the total parking provision provided would be 67 car parking spaces and 170 cycle spaces. All the floors above the first floor would consist of residential apartments, the majority of which would be 1 and 2 bedroomed. The apartments would also be accessed via Pavilion Road, which would undergo junction improvements in line with Nottinghamshire County Council highways. So I'll just take you through some photos of the site. I appreciate some of you will have been to site already, but for the benefit of the people that haven't been. This is a photo from the existing car parking area showing the view of the rear of the properties to Rosebery Avenue. You can see here this is the existing entrance to the site, so that's where the new entrance gates and gatehouse would go, and then also the substation would be positioned approximately in this location. So this is a view of the existing car park. This would form part of the new plaza area and the coach parking provision that will be provided. This is just a wider view of the existing car park, and you can see the existing Peter Taylor stand here, which would obviously be significantly increased in scale and footprint. And then again, the car park would form part of the new plaza. This is just a view looking down at the entrance and Pavilion Road. You can see on your screen here, this is the existing club shop, which would be demolished, and the residential element of the scheme would be located approximately in this location. This is just a photograph of the rear of number 27 Rosebery Avenue, so you can see it in context with the site. And that's the Bridgeford stand there, and then this is the corner of the existing Peter Taylor stand. So this is a view of the rear of the Champion Centre and the existing club shop. So this would form part of the residential element of the scheme. It would form the private courtyard and parking facilities associated with the residential element. This is a view looking at the junction of Pavilion Road. So you can see the existing club shop here, which again would be demolished, and the junction priority would be changed in line with the Nottinghamshire County Council Highways comments. This is a view providing context from the top of Pavilion Road and Radcliffe Road, just so you can see a bit of context of the site from further afield. And again, this is the other side of Pavilion Road. So again, just looking at the context of the site. This is a view looking down Trent Side North. So you can see here the existing Trent End stand. The residential element of the scheme would be set behind these boat clubs that you can just about see here, and obviously behind the waterside apartments. So moving further along Trent Side North, these are the row of existing boat clubs. Again, the residential element of the scheme would be set behind here. And this is the last boat club in the row, Britannia Boathouse, which would have to be demolished in order to facilitate the new plaza and the replacement stand. And I'll expand upon that later in the presentation. And this is another key view, a picture taken from Trent Bridge, which, as you will be aware, is a listed building, and so obviously that needs to be given careful consideration. This is a view from across the river, so just giving you the context of the existing skyline. And lastly, just a photo from further up the river, so you can see the context of the listed Trent Bridge in context with the site. So I'll just show you a few visuals which are quite helpful to provide context of scale and massing, but they are indicative, so just bear that in mind. Obviously, you've got the existing waterside apartments here, the existing Trent End stand here, the proposed replacement stand and the club shop would be located within this corner, and then the residential apartment block here. And then just some further visuals showing you the proposed new public plaza, and then another visual just showing you the context with its surroundings. So you've got the elevations here which show you the scale of the residential apartments and the new stand, and I'll leave these on screen whilst I go through the key considerations for the application. So firstly, in terms of the principle of the development, in terms of the stand development, the existing Peter Taylor stand, it's acknowledged that it is outdated and lacks facilities associated with a modern football stadium. The current stand limits opportunities to generate match day income from hospitality and sponsors and to attract and retain new supporters. The provision of a replacement stand would not only enhance spectator and player experiences, but would provide additional revenues and facilities for the use outside of match days. The enhancement would support and establish an integral sporting facility within the borough, with significant community benefits as a cultural and tourism venue. The principle of redeveloping the Peter Taylor stand to enhance the existing sporting facilities, as well as provide a new public plaza on established brownfield site, is clearly supported in both national and local planning policies. In terms of the proposed residential element of the scheme, the reuse of brownfield land in a sustainable and well-connected location for the provision of housing should be afforded significant weight as per the NPPF. The principle of residential development in this location is therefore supported. I'll now just move on to matters of design. So in terms of design, the proposal has been well considered and considerable attention has been given by the applicant to achieve the scale of development required in a tight urban environment. The proposed replacement stand would be the tallest stand at the stadium, but it has been designed to be in keeping with the existing development within the ground. Design amendments have been made through the course of the application, one notable one being the design of the northwestern frontage along Trentside North, so that it actively addresses the key view into the city. In terms of public realm, the proposed public plaza would create a new and enhanced public realm and pedestrian link between Trentside North and Pavilion Road. It would include new paving, street tree planting, lighting and pathways that would enhance the permeability and attractiveness of the area. In terms of the residential element of the scheme, as you will be aware, the appearance is a reserved matter. So at this stage, all we are considering is the proposed layout and scale of the building. It's acknowledged that a building of this scale and height would impact the character of the area and key viewpoints along the riverside. The highest point of the building would be adjacent to the riverside, and this would step downwards towards Pavilion Road. When considered in context with the adjacent Waterside apartments, which itself has recently undergone its own expansion to increase its height, it's considered that the building of this scale and height would be appropriate for this key location. It's also important to highlight that the emerging Rushcliffe Design Code identifies the riverside as being an appropriate location for tall buildings. Having carefully reviewed the design of the proposal, officers consider that its design is acceptable and would comply with both national and local policies in this regard. I'll just move on to highways impacts now. So in terms of the proposed replacement stand, it is acknowledged that car parking provision would be reduced to facilitate this along with the new plaza. The parking spaces in the front car park would be reduced from 171 to 35 spaces, which would result in a net loss of 136 car parking spaces, and we acknowledge that this is a significant loss. It's also acknowledged that the additional capacity of 5,000 spectators would increase parking demand and movements to and from the site. Extensive negotiations between the applicant, officers and the Highways Authority have been undertaken during the course of this application to ensure that highway impacts of the proposal are appropriately mitigated. An extensive suite of Section 106 contributions and mitigation measures have been agreed to by the applicant, and it's on this basis that the Highways Authority do not object to the application. The mitigation measures requested by the Highways Authority would be secured and managed through planning conditions and a legal agreement, and this is set out in detail within your committee report. On this basis, it's considered that the proposed replacement stand would be acceptable in highway safety terms. In terms of the residential element of the proposal, it's acknowledged that the scheme would provide significantly less parking provision than what would usually be expected for a residential scheme. However, the site is based in a highly sustainable location with excellent links to public transportation. Mitigation measures such as traffic regulation orders have been agreed with the applicant and Highways Authority, and it's subject to these mitigation measures that the County Council Highways do not object to the application as your technical consultee. I will just move on to matters of heritage now. So as you will be aware from reading the report, there are no listed buildings on the site, and the site's also not located within a conservation area. However, the site is located within close proximity to Trent Bridge and the Trent Bridge Arches, which are both listed, and also Old Trent Bridge, which is identified as a scheduled ancient monument. Careful consideration therefore needs to be afforded to the impacts of the proposal on these heritage assets. Your conservation officer is satisfied that the proposal would not cause harm to the significance of these heritage assets, and it's therefore considered that the proposal would meet national and local planning policies in heritage terms. Further, as Andrew has already highlighted within the late representations, the Britannia Boathouse has been identified as a non-designated heritage asset, and its demolition therefore needs to be carefully considered as part of the planning balance. Officers consider that the public benefits of the scheme would clearly outweigh its loss in heritage terms, and planning conditions have been recommended to ensure its significance is recorded prior to demolition. It's important to highlight that your conservation officers agree with this assessment and do not object to the application. So whilst I'm on the topic of the demolition of the boathouse, It's important to highlight that the boathouse has also been identified as an asset of community value, and it's therefore afforded protection from Policy 30 of Local Plan Part 2. Whilst the proposal would require the demolition of the boathouse, officers are satisfied that the replacement of this facility can be appropriately secured through a legal agreement. This approach would ensure that no development can commence until such time that a replacement boathouse has been granted planning permission and has been constructed. Both the applicant and the boat club are in agreement with this approach. It's probably worth mentioning that at this stage, we don't have details of where the new facilities would be located, but this would come forward as part of a future planning application once the proposed location and details have been agreed between the two parties. So I'll just move on to matters of residential amenity. The replacement stand will be significantly taller and larger in footprint, which would have a greater impact on adjacent neighbouring properties than the existing arrangement. The proposed stand has been designed to be inward facing, which would reduce the opportunity for overlooking issues with neighbouring residents. In terms of sunlight and daylight, an assessment was submitted by the applicant, which confirmed that out of 176 windows, 162 would meet the requirement for sunlight and daylight, and it also confirmed that the remaining windows would only be marginally affected by the proposals. However, officers do consider that there will be a degree of conflict with the development plan in terms of the overbearing impacts to number 27 Rosebery Avenue due to the overall size and scale of the replacement stand and its proximity to this neighbour. This has been afforded significant weight by your officers in the planning balance and needs to be considered within the wider planning balance when weighing up the positives and negatives of the scheme. In terms of the residential apartment element of the proposal, your officers are satisfied that the proposal would not cause undue harm to neighbouring residents. So I'll just move on to the economic impact matters. So it won't be lost on members that the club is integral to tourism and the visitor offer of the borough and Greater Nottingham as a whole, and it plays an integral role in supporting our local economy. The economic benefits that the proposal would provide are significant and need to be carefully considered within the planning balance. The submitted economic impact assessment identifies that the development would boost the local economy by £13 million per year. And when taking this into account with the club's existing contribution to the local economy, it would total £77 million per year. The development would increase employment by 264 net additional jobs. And again, this is on top of the club's current contributions to the economy in employment terms. This would provide significant benefits to the local and wider economy, and it's considered that significant weight should be afforded to these benefits within the planning balance. I'll just move on to viability now. So in terms of viability for the residential scheme, a lot of work has been undertaken by both officers and the applicant to ensure the scheme is providing the appropriate level of contributions. As Andrew has previously highlighted, when the application previously was heard by Planning Committee, the viability package proposed by the applicant at the time amounted to £430,000, which was below the amount considered viable within the submitted viability assessment. The reason for this was that there was an enabling link between the developments, and the applicant was effectively using some of the profits from the residential scheme to help fund and facilitate the building of the replacement stand. Since this time, discussions with officers have been ongoing, and based on the revised viability assessment submitted and the removal of the enabling link, the residential element of the scheme would now contribute £1.25 million, and this would ensure that the contributions requested by the relevant bodies that meet the relevant test would be supplied in full. The scheme has therefore significantly improved in this regard since it was previously heard at Planning Committee. In terms of the proposed replacement stand element of the scheme, the full contribution requests of £1.74 million have been agreed as part of the draft Section 106 document and is set out in detail within the committee report. This weighs significantly in favour of the scheme, as both elements of the scheme would be compliant with our planning obligations policy within the development plan. So I'll just start my concluding remarks now. So in terms of other material considerations, matters such as flooding, ecology, biodiversity, net gain and other material considerations have been considered in great length and detail within the committee report. And it's considered that those elements would be acceptable subject to conditions which are also outlined in detail within the committee report. So we now come to the planning balance. When considering the planning balance, it's important to highlight that the proposal is a strategically important development which would result in significantly improved sporting facilities for a variety of users in the immediate and the wider locality. The development would have wide-ranging and positive economic, social and environmental impacts that weigh heavily in favour of the proposal. It's considered that the harms identified would be clearly outweighed by the public benefits that the proposal would bring. It's therefore considered that, subject to the imposition of appropriate planning conditions, the proposal would represent a sustainable form of development that would be considered to align with the policies of the development plan when taken as a whole. Accordingly, it's recommended by your officers that planning permission be granted, subject to a series of planning conditions and the signing of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have four speakers. The first of which is Chris Potts, who is agent on behalf of the applicant. So if you'd like to come up here, you'll be briefed on the rules here. You have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes time. When you start speaking, we'll start the timer, and assuming you're still speaking with 30 seconds to go, we'll let you know that the clock's ticking. Okay, ready when you are.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chris Potts. I'm a Senior Director of Savills, and I'm speaking this evening on behalf of Nottingham Forest Football Club, who are the applicant. I've been working closely with the football club for a number of years, and indeed had the privilege to address this committee in July 2022. For those present at that occasion, you'll recall that Forest had just been promoted back to the Premier League, which is the most popular and watched league in the world. Since that last committee, Forest have established themselves in the Premier League. They're returning to European competition, and recently the City Ground hosted an England Men's International. An amazing 3 years. That incredible achievement on the pitch has really shone a light on the need to improve the City Ground. It needs to adapt to the enormous focus on the club, the demand for tickets and the interest in the Premier League. You'll be aware of new stadia in the Premier League, expanded stadia. There's a lot of investment in facilities, and Nottingham Forest needs to do likewise, and is keen to do so. With a capacity of 30,000, we know the City Ground needs to evolve. It needs to do so in a way that retains the passion, the atmosphere and the pride that the City Ground brings and makes it so special. The planning application before you regarding the Peter Taylor Stand and Housing Scheme has been stress tested by your officers and the county not once but twice, and the committee report that you've been briefed on is extremely comprehensive. It's pleasing to see the Director of Planning's recommendation for approval and the very significant benefits that this stadium and housing would bring to the borough, the city and the region. The Peter Taylor Stand has witnessed some incredible moments, but with a capacity of 5,000, and it's quite an old structure, it's the obvious part of the stadium to look to expand. And given the expectations of the club, supporters and media, the club is obviously keen to focus on that. A new stand of 10,000 spectators will be modern, it'll be inclusive, it'll accommodate for new media requirements, it will work incredibly well on match days, but all year round. The delivery of a new stand will be transformational for the area and will represent the first step in the City Ground's evolution. But don't underestimate the challenge of delivering stadium development. It's incredibly expensive. the timetabling in order to make sure the City Ground remains match fit and operational is incredibly tight. And of course, when you do redevelop, you remove a stand, so you reduce capacity and income. So undertaking this is a major commitment. The City Ground has been Forest's home for well over 100 years, and the club prides itself on being a good neighbour. I'm sure you're aware of the community programmes and outreach which the club undertakes, looking to tackle many of the issues with which society is struggling. A new and improved facility at the City Ground will allow the club to do more. There are obviously issues that stadium development trigger, and you've heard in the summary from the officer about traffic and transport. That's been very heavily scrutinised by the County Council. They are independent and objective, and you'll see in the committee report they raise no objection subject to the requirements which the club is keen to agree to. While the City Ground improvements are high profile, there is also much needed housing that's been touched on a brownfield site. There's a new plaza between Trentside North and Pavilion Road, and the boathouse will be relocated. Members, this application came before committee several years ago, having been scrutinised thoroughly. We've updated reports, we've been out to consultation, it's been thoroughly tested again, and it's pleasing to see the recommendation before you is approval. And we trust that the committee will follow that recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, Penny Gowan, please.
So the objector speaking slot is being shared, and so I understand that you'll be speaking for 3 minutes, and then Councillor Sue Mallender will be speaking for 2 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I want this application sorted out now so the club can move forward and start to engage the community. But I want conditions on stronger transport plans and better telecommunications. People tell me that residents who live in West Bridgford knew what they were getting into when they moved in and should put up with the chaos that was frequently rained on them by football, cricket and rugby grounds. But it's not true that anybody moved in more than a couple of years ago, because first, the number of people attending matches is now reaching figures not seen since the 1970s. This plan will obviously increase it further. That's good. Secondly, the number of people driving has increased massively since the 1970s. Most people wouldn't have come by car then. Most people do now. And finally, of course, the size of cars has increased considerably. So now that parking blocks the roads. So don't tell me that residents have to put up with this. When thousands of people descend on the City Ground on a Wednesday night, the whole of the south of the city and the county grind to a halt. Bus services collapse, so a 45-minute commute takes 2 hours. Bus routes are diverted as they can't get along roads due to appalling parking. People in wheelchairs are stuck at home by terrible pavement parking. Residents coming home from work have to park in the city centre, there's nowhere closer. To make matters worse, the broadband collapses and telephone networks can't handle the demand. So we're left in a situation with we can't call the fire engine, and if we do, they probably can't get through to the property. This isn't good for fans either. I see them cruising around, getting increasingly frustrated as time ticks down to kick-off. They want to come and enjoy the match, not worry about parking. We want fans to have a good impression of Nottingham and West Bridgford, not one of frustration of fines. This isn't an insurmountable problem. We need the county, city, borough and club to work together to provide sensible transport plans. London clubs have matchday parking restrictions. Scarrington Road entrance to the City Ground has this. If it's good enough for Forest, it's good enough for residents. But what about the fans? We need a massive increase in the current use of discounted public transport tickets and park and rides included in the ticket prices, with extra buses provided for park and ride at appropriate locations. I love cycling. It's not realistic to think fans are going to cycle, all fans are going to cycle. I would like to see Wi-Fi provided throughout the ground so we can still use our phones during a match. It'd be great if everybody could be celebrating Forest success and taking pride in living in the sporting culture of the city with football, cricket, rugby, rowing and kayaking all within a stone's throw of each other. What we have instead is residents at the wit's end. With County Hall being retained as a civic centre, we have the opportunity to exploit it to make Trent Bridge the heart of the sporting quarter, famous across the city, region, county and even the world. Forest is bringing national and international visitors to our area. We don't want them to be faced with a snarled up area full of irate residents and commuters. We want fans to enjoy a smoothly run city they can want to come back to. Please include conditions for more meaningful transport plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak. The residents of Lady Bay Ward have suffered for a very long time every time there is a match. And every time since I've been Secretary of Lady Bay Community Association, and that was in 1987, I've been trying to do something about this with Forest. And unfortunately, we just get nowhere. And now not only do we have the increase in capacity of the stand, bringing even more traffic to be parked every time there's a match into the area, we also have a development, I'd realise it's only an outline, of 170 units with a net loss of 136 car parking spaces and only 67 car parking spaces provided. As Councillor Gowland has already said, what we need in order for this development to be acceptable to the people of Lady Bay and other parts of West Bridgford and parts of the city that abut this area is a proper transport plan that really does encourage people to use active travel or public transport. We suffer from severe congestion, from parking on pavements, from parking illegally on double yellow lines that very little is done about. We have poor air quality. Our buses, the number 11 bus, cannot get through on many occasions on a Saturday afternoon or whenever it is the matches are played. Tell someone who is an elderly lady that I have witnessed or having to get off on the bus on Radcliffe Road because the bus couldn't get down Trent Boulevard. We're told that emergency vehicles just plough through, but that's not very good for either the vehicles that they hit or the emergency vehicles themselves if they're damaged. So that isn't an answer. We want additional work to be done on that travel plan.
Okay,
In
so
Switzerland,
that's 2 minutes, so please finish.
In Switzerland, people get free travel to events such as football matches and public transport, and that's what we want to see. And instead of say to those people that are moving into the development that they don't need a car unless they have an adapted vehicle.
Councillor Mandel, would ask you to bring it to a close now.
A car club scheme instead. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Plant, who's speaking to us as the ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Rushcliffe Borough Council's strapline is great place, great lifestyle and great sport. And undoubtedly Nottingham Forest Football Club contributes hugely to that strapline. It goes without saying that the club makes a huge contribution to the local West Bridgford economy and that of the city, particularly in the hospitality sector. Undoubtedly, the profile of Nottingham City and West Bridgford would be raised by the club's success and involvement in European football. However, residents in Trent Bridgeward, the ward closest to the city ground, would rightly expect me to place on record the problems with parking and congestion already faced by many of them before, during and after home matches. The roads around the centre of West Bridgford mainly consist of Edwardian and Victorian houses, many of which have only on-street parking. Many residents already find it difficult on match days to park on their own street, never mind outside their own house. Residents with drives often find they cannot access them or are blocked in because of inconsiderate parking by fans attending the matches. Many residents lack confidence in parking enforcement measures on match days. increasing the capacity of the ground by 5,000, reducing the amount of car parking within the ground, and the lack of sufficient parking spaces in the proposed apartment block will only exacerbate the parking problem and increase the congestion around the ground. The transport assessment identifies the need for a further 1,416 parking spaces generated by the application. Where will those be? I know officers have worked hard with the applicant and stakeholders to finalise the draft Section 106 agreement that is before us tonight. This provides real opportunity for proactive action to mitigate the impact of the development on local residents. Paragraph 334 in the report states that the applicant has committed to provision and agreement of a travel plan to encourage sustainable traffic modes and actively discourage the use of the car. That's a brilliant statement. Only such a commitment will help to alleviate parking issues and improve traffic flows during peak periods. However, the submitted transport assessment in support of the application is based on data from 2019. Much has changed in that time, most notably the reduction of available free on-street parking around the centre of West Bridgford. Nottinghamshire County Council, the local highways authority, have stated they don't object to the findings and methodology as presented in the report, but that this position heavily relies on the implementation and extensive travel plan processes and the agreement to Section 106 obligations. There are many good, if not detailed, suggestions in the travel plan, and there is Section 106 monies to support them, more than there was in the previous application. However, there has to be real commitment from the club to use every method at their disposal to reduce the amount of car journeys to future matches and encourage fans to use more active travel to get to the ground. What is glaringly absent from the report is any consultation with local community groups and local councillors. The report states that the developer is required to appoint a principal travel plan coordinator who will act as the promoter of the travel plan to secure its implementation, as well as being the key contact for residents, employers and visitors to the site. Perhaps the coordinator could also be the key contact for communication with local councillors during the construction of the development, should the application be successful this evening. Without doubt, better communication and engagement between the club and the local community, including local councillors, would help to foster community involvement and support the club's ambitions. I've been contacted by the Nottingham Kayak Club to raise the following concerns about the proposed application on their behalf. One, the lack of consultation for pedestrianising Trendside North at all times, not just match times, as access is required daily by the club for dropping off and picking up boats. Concerns about access to the emergency services to Trendside North. The club is unable to find any wind analysis affecting the River Trent in the report. Concerns about access arrangements during construction and after construction on Trendside North, and concerns about the reduction in car parking on Trendside outside of matches for the boat clubs. It goes without saying that this application is an ambitious project for the club that will have a huge impact on the local area, economically, socially and environmentally, both during construction and on completion. Transparent communication with the community and stakeholders will be vital to ensure its success and to enable both Nottingham Forest Football Club and the local community to feel the benefits of the proposed application. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of the speakers this evening. Mr. Cullen, Ms. Thompson, do you have any points of clarification from that you'd like to make before we start discussion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there was initial comments about the request for conditions for a stronger travel plan and transport plans. We consider these to already be very detailed and very comprehensive, and which condition was it? Condition 15 allows for an updated travel plan. So those travel plan measures are not set in stone. It has to be done in broad accordance with that, and there is chance for them to provide more mitigation measures. In terms, the issue of telecoms was raised. We appreciate that large events do, encounter telecoms issues. There's no denying that. What I would say to you is that they are dealt with by a separate regulatory body, and we wouldn't consider it appropriate to add a condition in that regard. There was a mention about the data of the transport assessment. So yes, the data is from 2019, but an updated transport note has been provided in 2025. So that's been considered by Nottinghamshire County Council Highways, and they do consider that data to be appropriate and accurate, and they agree with the methodology of that. There was also a mention about wind analysis that is included within condition 12 within the landscaping scheme. So there's a requirement for a wind and microclimate assessment to be submitted. I think that covers everything unless you want to come back.
Okay, thank you. So we've had the presentation, we've heard from the speakers. We have a recommendation in the report starting at page 126, and it falls to us now to discuss and decide that. As we did last week, I think once we've got a topic for discussion, I'd like us to try and stay on that until we don't have any more points before moving on to the next area. So where do you want to start? Councillor Calvert.
Do we want to decide what topic we're going to discuss first, or if I say what I want to discuss, we will discuss that one?
The latter, indeed. Go for it.
Cool.
Get us going.
Okay, I'll go. I don't underestimate the importance of the decision we, as a member of this committee, have to make tonight. Many Forest fans will be keenly awaiting a decision to approve the application, while many local residents will be anxious about the impact of an additional 5,000 spectators, many of whom on match days will be searching for a car parking space close to the city ground, causing further disruption in the local neighbourhood. I've been a resident in the local area for over 40 years, and one of the big attractions for me living here is the proximity of the city ground and the Trent Bridge cricket ground that rightfully can be described as world renowned. I'm fortunate to have my own driveway, but many of the residents locally do not, and consequently on match days they have to compete with home and away fans for parking spaces and disruption due to traffic congestion. I welcome the decision made a couple of years ago by Nottingham Forest Football Club not to relocate their stadium elsewhere. Not only would that have broken the historical link with the riverside area of West Bridgford, but an out-of-town location would undoubtedly have led to even more car-borne journeys on match days compared with the current development proposal, and would reduce the boost to the local economy that results from its current location. For many residents in the Greater Nottingham area, the recent success of the Forest team has given a very tangible feel-good factor, not least in Rushcliffe. However, there are many challenging impacts arising from the development, and I want to focus on those relating to the increase in the capacity of the stadium from 30,000 to 35,000. Some of these impacts have been well documented in the report as articulated by local borough councillors, the Lady Bay Community Association and Central West Bridgford Community Association. In particular, I want to focus on how to manage the very significant increase in the number of visitors to the area on match days. We are told that the Highway Authority, that's the County Council, initially raised concerns that the submitted transport statement and travel plan, and beware the double negative coming here, that travel plan failed to demonstrate that the proposal would not have severe impacts on the local network on highway safety, which I think means it would have impacts on highway safety, but maybe I'm generalizing. They were concerned that the significant parking demand would have implications for existing residents and businesses, and no mitigation for this was provided. However, further documents and information was provided from the applicant, such as the County Council no longer has any objections, subject to a range of conditions and the Section 106 developer contributions. As we've heard earlier, a lot of the data is linked to a historical survey of home fans in July 2019. The analysis is set out in paragraphs 311 to 343. In summary, it is estimated that on match days, there will be around 1,400 additional cars seeking a parking space in the vicinity of the city ground. It is relying on a range of measures in a developing travel plan to discourage spectators travelling by car, with investment in public transport, cycling and walking, and traffic management measures. These are referred to in conditions 15 and 16 and the Section 106 contributions. Turning to condition 15, it requires the applicant to submit a travel plan to the local planning authority, which would need to be agreed before the new stand could be occupied. The purpose of travel plans is to encourage drivers to change behaviour by using more sustainable modes, public transport, cycling and walking, and to actively discourage use of the car. However, this tends to be more effective when there is only a solo driver. On match days, it is estimated that an average of 2.4 persons per vehicle arrive at the city ground. So that means there's a significant amount of car sharing. And I think a lot of these drivers will feel that they're already acting sustainably by car sharing. So will many be persuaded to travel in a more sustainable manner? I think there's doubt about that. Condition 16 requires the applicant to appoint a travel plan coordinator who will be responsible for the implementation, delivery, monitoring and promotion of the sustainable transport initiatives set out in the forthcoming updated travel plan, as approved in condition 15. The details shall be provided and continue to be provided when requested thereafter to the local planning authority. Again, the replacement stand and its associated facilities shall not be brought into use until this condition is met. I raised a few questions last week with our planners after the report was published regarding these two conditions, and I just want to mention a couple of those. On condition 15, I was querying about what are the respective roles of Rushcliffe, of the County Council and the City Council, who are both the highway authorities, in approving the travel plan, who will ultimately decide to approve it. And the answer was that the travel plan will be submitted to Rushcliffe Borough Council, who would consult both the City and County Councils, and they would need to be satisfied with the updated plan before Rushcliffe discharges the condition. So basically the two highway authorities seem to have a significant role to play here in the travel plan's development. Another question was, will the travel plan include measurable targets for a reduction in car modal share and for increased off-street parking provision? And the answer was that I was referred to the existing 2021 travel plan, which again has been mentioned before. It says that the County Council's guidance is that all targets should be SMART. So I'm sorry, this is a bit technical. SMART means targets should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. The plan states that it has been agreed with NOTS CC that it would not be appropriate to set targets for spectators, both home and away. I agree that targets for away fans would be difficult due to the range of different origins. They're travelling from different places, and would be difficult due to that. But I think there is scope for setting a target for home fans by undertaking annual surveys, and I'd certainly like to see that incorporated again. I think maybe there is an issue here that although the target can be specific and measurable and realistic and time-bound, maybe they're worried that it's not going to be achievable. More worrying is that there appears to be no reference in the existing travel plan to deal with the dire car parking problems associated with spectators on match days. Surely there has to be an overall parking strategy that includes park and ride, off-road parking and on-street parking. This would give some justification for the choice of measures to ease the concerns of local residents. On condition 16, I asked the question, can the condition be amended to include the establishment of a local community liaison group to give a voice to those who will be directly affected by the development? That would be for developing also for developing the travel plan. This could be related to the transport management group that's referred later in condition 22E with a wider remit beyond activities on site. The answer was that as the condition requires the coordinator to be responsible for the implementation of the plan, it would not be reasonable in this particular situation. So how can we improve the communications between the local residents and the applicant? Could it be done by a separate condition, as a query? Finally, on the section 106 draft heads of terms, I was asking, or it's made the statement that it was hard to identify what schemes can be afforded by the actual quantum of money that is being allocated for traffic regulation orders and for the parking permits. And the answer was this will be considered and implemented by the County Council, but broadly it will result in a widening radius of traffic regulation orders and parking permits schemes over a wider area. Two more things that I want to mention. Firstly, the cumulative impact of the wide range of events in the sporting quarter of West Bridgford. For example, residents in the western end of Lady Bay have not only the all year round impacts of football and cricket to contend with, but in the last few years, the increasing numbers attending Nottingham Rugby. And it is not just traffic that causes the problems, but it can be social events that are add-ons to the regular sporting fixtures, which occur with none of the appropriate level of consultation. It is important to take all these cumulative effects into account in terms of assessing the impact on the local area. Related to that is the issue of enforcement. There are 72 conditions attached to the recommendations of this report. Many of these will require monitoring and possibly enforcement by the local planning authority or highway authority. I sincerely hope they employ the necessary resources to perform this effectively. So in summary, you'll be pleased to know, number one, there are many benefits for Rushcliffe and its residents to increase the capacity of the city ground. However, there are disbenefits, not least the additional traffic and demands on car parking spaces on match days. Thirdly, the existing travel plan is inadequate, and there's no guarantee that local community groups will have a voice in the preparation of the new plan. And I think we've got to find some condition that is put in to make sure that local community groups can influence and provide expertise in the travel plan. Fourthly, there is no evidence of an overall parking strategy which would give the credence to individual measures identified. And finally, number five, as it stands today, it feels like we're relying on a wing and a prayer to improve conditions for local residents. I say to the local authorities and the applicant, work with them and listen to their concerns. Thank you.
It's up to you. Do you want to come? Yes, okay.
Thank you. I think that one thing that we need to highlight is that it's not the job of this application to mitigate existing issues in terms of parking within the area. That's not what we're here to consider. We're here to consider the increase in capacity and obviously the decrease in parking and what impact that will have. Obviously, we've already said that our technical consultee, Council Highways, do find the travel plan to be adequate. In terms of, you said that initially, obviously Council Highways didn't object to the application because no mitigation measures were provided. That is correct. Obviously, we now have extensive mitigation measures within the travel plan and Section 106 contributions. Yeah. I'll just go through some of the mitigation measures just to highlight how significant, they are. Okay, so for the stand, we have obviously the two conditions that you have been referencing, an updated travel plan and also a travel plan coordinator, which would be responsible for ensuring that the mitigation measures within the travel plan are implemented in full. Within the submitted travel plan, improvements include improvements to the Nottingham Forest Football Club website to promote sustainable use of transport, sustainable modes of transport, colour-coded tickets and signage to different parts of the club, mapping of walking routes from public transport nodes printed on the reverse of all the tickets, actively encouraging spectators to arrive earlier and stay later, with pre and post match entertainment and hospitality, so that would stagger departure and arrivals. Stewarding measures to optimise crowd flows, the use of coaches as an alternative mode of transport for spectators, consideration of temporary road closures, sustainable transport initiatives for staff and bus taster tickets and car club schemes. And then we also have a very large suite of Section 106 contributions. So match day traffic regulation orders of £50,000, match day permits of £190,000, bus service improvements of £210,000 for 5 years. So that totals £1,050,000. Electronic transport displays of £50,000. Footpath upgrade to Grantham Canal, £50,000. Cycle access improvements to Lady Bay Bridge and access off Skoughton Road, £200,000. Pedestrian crossing improvements to London Road and Cattle Market Junction, £150,000. So it has been looked at in great detail. It's obviously been heavily scrutinised by both officers and Nottinghamshire County Council Highways, and they do not object to the application.
Councillor, do you want to come back on this topic?
Chair, just curious as to why you say that you feel that travel plan's adequate. Why are you then asking a travel plan coordinator to develop the travel plan?
Yeah, I can answer that.
To make a new travel plan?
Yeah, so the condition requires an updated travel plan, but it does have to be done in broad accordance with the travel plan that's submitted.
Okay.
That's to allow further mitigation measures to be included, you know, as necessary. And obviously, like we said, you know, as part of the discharge and condition application, we would consult with the relevant bodies, and we would ultimately be the one, you know, making the decision as to whether it's acceptable. In terms of the travel plan coordinator, that is required to ensure that it can be appropriately you know, provided.
Okay, I'll try asking the question again. At the moment, you are employing somebody to develop the travel plan, which would imply to me anyway that it's not adequate at the moment. Oh.
So I think the travel plan coordinator is the person that's going to be appointed who will be responsible for implementing and sort of delivering the travel plan, monitoring it and promoting it throughout its journey. It will be for the applicant to provide us with the updated travel plan as part of condition 15. There's condition 16 that there will be a separate travel plan coordinator, whoever that may be, who will then be in charge of monitoring and carrying out the responsibilities of the travel plan. And within the travel plan itself, there's specific bullet points that the travel plan coordinator will be responsible for. And that is, for example, expanding on and designing, implementing effective site-wide measures, liaising with transport management groups, including sort of the applicant, Rushcliffe, Notts County Council, safety advisory groups, as well as arranging other sort of forums and groups as well along the way. Hopefully that answers.
Can I have one more go? one more go. Okay. Yeah, you've picked me up there and saying that the new travel plan coordinator would be involved with the preparation, but in reality that may not be the case. It will be the applicant who will have to develop it. But it's still the same question. Somebody is having to develop the existing 2021 or whatever it is travel plan, and I was making a comment when I was speaking that that is inadequate, and we're going to move collectively to a new plan, and that is where I think there is a major role for the local residents to be involved and also get the issue of parking on the table in developing the travel plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're on, I think, the general topic of parking and traffic, particularly on match days. And I've got the Councillor Eddie Veen on this, and after that, see and then Councillor Birch. So we'll stick on this until we're ready to move on.
Yeah, I think I was going to comment on something that doesn't exist yet, and that's the new Trent crossing. And I know when we were looking at that, because obviously that's going to have a major impact, or potentially going to have a major impact on allowing that travel plan to be developed further, and should be used to mitigate against car journeys to and from the city, or people not being able to park in the locality. And obviously I think we can all understand the frustration of people who live in West Bridgford and car parking issues that arise on match day. But I'm pretty, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Trent Crossing is now going ahead. I'm pretty sure that there is money on our side of the river to improve the pedestrian links from the crossing to exactly where we want to go. And certainly when the Trent Crossing pedestrian and cycling crossing was first mooted, I was involved in it at the time, and it was one of the major advantages was going to be the, if you like, ability to create access from the city to sporting events in West Bridgford. Now, I know it's not part of the report, but I do think it is a significant thing that should be taken on board in the future. And it's obviously it's not there yet, so it's not been considered in this plan, but there is an opportunity, I believe, to significantly use that crossing when it's there to mitigate a lot of the issues that people are rightly concerned about.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. And I do have sympathy with a lot of the councillors who spoke, representing their residents. My view is, as the officers have acknowledged, there is going to be increased pressure on the parking. It's inevitable. But in my view, that's the cost of progress. There are mitigations in place. There's a travel plan. And what we're here to do tonight is to weigh up everything in the balance. So perhaps personally for me, this is in the negative column. It's not great. We would love to live in a utopia where there was great parking solutions, but there isn't. But again, we are making a decision here in the balance. And I do note for the application, there were 2,538 letters of support and only 116 letters to object. And if there was a huge groundswell of local residents being very concerned about this, one would have thought there'll be many, many hundreds of letters coming in, and obviously there wasn't. So I do sympathise. You've made your case very, very well. And, you know, my heart goes out to you because that is an issue and that's going to have to be tackled further down the line. But in the balance, as I say, I think overall, to me, this is not perfect, but in the balance, we have to weigh the whole thing.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've had quite a lot of experience of travel plans with respect to residential developments, and to be honest, I haven't had much faith in them doing what they were going to do, say they were going to do, or being carried forward. I've got some questions really about the, there's quite a lot of contributions towards this. I've got some questions about them really. So are there park and ride sites identified and busing people in? Is that one of the
Sorry, could you just repeat that question for us?
I'm just wondering if there are park and ride sites identified to bus people in so that the cars don't come in on match days.
Can't see that in the travel plan at the moment, but again, as Charlotte's mentioned, obviously there will be an updated travel plan as part of that condition, so that's something that I'm sure the applicant can consider.
Yeah, and so there's an area for coach parking shown, and you talked about people being bussed in more. Is that where the people would be bussed into, or is there another coach unloading areas in the other car park?
So our understanding is that the coach in the plaza area would be for the sort of the players and officials and sort of the team, but the coach would be elsewhere in the grounds because they've got the other car park to the north of the stand as well. So again, that's going to form part of that updated travel plan and sort of build on the principles that are already in the travel plan that we've got with us at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And there's quite a large contribution for improved bus services for 5 years. So the questions about those are, what are the improvements and what happens after 5 years?
So the detail of sort of a number of the infrastructure contributions, so the match day PROs, match day parking permits, improved bus services, are all sort of considered and dealt with by Nottinghamshire County Council. So obviously the payments would go towards them, and it would be up to them to dedicate the improvements as they sort of see fit, in line with sort of what's being sort of set out here. So this sets out sort of the contributions, and it would be for the county council to allocate, use and spend that as they would.
Okay, thank you. I think the feeling I'm getting is that you know, money's been put in here, and there's also one for car parking, residential car parking permits and so on, and it doesn't say where they are or anything. And there's an awful lot of working out to be done to make this effective. And I think the point I've got from the speakers is that the community don't feel they've got a voice in this, and they've got no confidence in it happening. I'm just wondering what the process is going to be going forward to make sure that there's real dialogue on this and real consultation, not just some pots of money that just sit there and don't get spent, which is the way it seems to go with quite a lot of pots of money that get allocated as contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you. I think one of our problems in Rushcliffe, we're too popular and we have too many venues for whether it's cricket, whether it's home Pierpont, whether it's in the city, whether it's here. And we have the two, the cricket and we have the football. And I'm sure that I hope that they all get together at some times, you know, to talk about travel plans and to talk about other things. I do think that actually Park and Rides was quite a good idea, but they've still got to get the buses in and just keep everything moving. But so I still think there's considerable work to be done, and I'm sure it will still happen. And I'm sure that, you know, Forest want it to be a success because they need to get their people into the ground and in a proper fashion. So I am looking at the balance at the moment of the what is going to happen and the new crossing and various other things that can come up in the future to do it, as against those people that want to come and Forest enjoy it and everything else, and some of the planning issues that there is on the site that seem very positive. So having looked at it so far, I am willing to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else on transport, Councillor Chaplin?
So I also live in Lade Bay and have done for a long time. And to be honest, for me, it's the balance is being 5 minutes walk away from a football ground and a cricket ground and a rugby ground and a National Water Sports Centre outweighs the fact that when those things are on, I can't park. But then that is because if I have to go and park 2 or 3 roads away, I can walk and I can get back. And I can see why it is a lot more annoying for people who have to get home more quickly. But having said that, my concern is that we seem to be being asked to agree for something that we don't have a lot of control over. We're being asked, if this robust travel plan works, it'll be brilliant because it'll actually make things better than they are now. The parking situation couldn't be worse in Lady Bay because it's already full. What it will do is it'll make it worse in the bits of Bridgeford a bit further away. People will have to go a bit further. So more people will be affected by it. It won't be any worse close to the ground because, like I said, it can't be. So if it does work and if people start using the bus or start walking and people see an improvement, that would be brilliant. But I just feel we're being asked to trust that this travel plan is going to do that without having any control. We can't put a condition on with a target. I mean, I would love to see a target that said this travel plan will work to decrease the number of cars by 10% from the current level. And then that would be brilliant. And I also share the concern of people who feel that we're leaving some of the community behind. Obviously, the Forest fans are all for it, and that's good and brilliant. But there is a lot of bad feeling towards the development because people feel they're not being listened to. And if there was some way of engaging with people, having some sort of group that they can make representations to, I think that would help.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just be very brief, listening to other people's comments. Nottingham Forest are well known to work within the community and have done a lot of good work within the community. And a comment that Councillor Calvert made about working with the local residents. I know we can't make it a condition, but I don't think there'd be a problem recommending that the residents form a local liaison group with Forest, and I'm pretty sure, knowing that the Forest record for working within the community, I think they'd welcome it.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thanks, Chair. The report says there are 136 car places less. So where are those people who parked before are going to park? About a year and a half ago, this committee had a plan in Lady Bay to over a house, and I did go to Lady Bay and I walked up and down that street and I spoke to several of the people coming in and out of their houses, and they complained about match day and on cricket because their drives are blocked and they had to phone up the ground, and if the spectator came out to move the car, there was arguments. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith in highways or this travel plan. Councillor Brown, I think it's a great idea. There should be another committee with the residents on to work with the travel plan. Thank you.
Sorry, just to highlight, obviously there's been a few suggestions that, you know, you're wanting a condition that the applicant engage in a community group. Whilst we don't think that's appropriate, what we could do if members were, you know, minded to do this, was to put a note to applicant, so an informative basically on any decision notice, encouraging them to do that. In terms of enforcement, obviously, you know, if members were minded to grant permission, you know, with the conditions, we would actively enforce that those conditions are, you know, dealt with appropriately by the applicant. So just to bear that in mind as well.
Councillor Thomas.
Oh, I think I'd support a note to applicants to actively set up a consultation group for the update and implementation of the travel plan. I think that's quite positive. But I think from the point of view of Rushcliffe, the thing that we could do is actually set up our own group to monitor that, or add it to the responsibilities for the West Bridgeford group that exists. And I think that would be a perfectly reasonable thing for Rushcliffe to do. It falls outside the scope of determining this planning application, but I do think that's something that we could do. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So I think we've been on this area for a while. Where shall we move on to next? Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to discuss the economic growth aspects, which to me is the most important factor that we're sort of weighing up this evening. And to my mind, it's overwhelmingly positive. We've got 218 new jobs being created, plus the jobs that are being created in the construction phase. You've got £17 million per year to the local economy. It stabilises Nottingham Forest as a club, and as we all know, we've got the financial fair play rules and the profit and sustainability rules from the Premier League. Forest need to grow. They are literally competing with other clubs and actually across Europe even. So it's important for the club, which of course is a huge local employer, to give them the stability to grow. So to my mind, it's the biggest factor that we're considering tonight. It's overwhelmingly positive, and as we've just discussed with the parking, you know, this application isn't perfect. No application is, but in the balance, this is a big part of it. The job creation and the benefit to our area economically, I really think it's very positive.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I totally agree with Councillor Birch. In fact, I could have said pretty much the same myself. I'm very much in favour of growth. The negative bit, the parking and the travel plan, we're not going to resolve any issues here. And I share the concern about the travel plan, but that concern is hypothetical. We couldn't let that weigh too heavily in the balance. And I think the economic benefit really does outweigh any other consideration. As a country, we need growth. And I know this is only a small bit, but isn't it Tesco, every little helps? Thank you, Chair. Is it? Well, the sentiment was right, even if the quote was wrong.
Councillor Thomas, please.
Can I move on to another topic? I think everybody agrees that there's economic growth in this proposal.
And if there's nobody else who wants to come in on that, then yes. And have you got a suggestion where to?
Residential amenity is the one I was wanting to explore, really. And I'd just like I think the officer said that there will be impact on residential amenity, but that it was something to be in the planning balance, as it were, on the negative side. I'm just wondering, I haven't read all the consultation responses. I'm just wondering what came through in the consultation with residents about impact on amenity. I'm thinking about the neighbouring block and Rosebery. Is it Rosebery Road? Thank you.
Sorry, we're just having a look at whether, you know, number 27 Rosebery Avenue did comment on the application. But what I would say is that, yes, we do obviously consider the impact to neighbouring amenity as part of the application. And in this case, we do consider that there would be an overbearing impact to that neighbour. We have not taken that lightly. As officers, we've given significant weight to it in the planning balance. But when considering the planning balance in the round, we consider that the positive impacts far outweigh the negatives.
On the on that, the report and some of the documentation talks about, I think, sort of independent or commissioned report in, you know, in respect of that address specifically. Could you just give us a brief summary of what that found and how that was factored into your assessment, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the sunlight and daylight assessment, I think it's paragraph 407 of the report. So that sets out. So it doesn't consider the physical. I suppose it considers the impact that the proposal would have upon the existing properties. It acknowledged, I think, Charlotte, you mentioned in your presentation that it acknowledges that it does have an impact upon certain properties, including number 27 Rosebery Avenue. However, as you sort of mentioned, that needs to be weighed up in the overall balance. And I think it's important to note, if I can just direct members to paragraph 627 of the report, and that sort of acknowledges that there would be a degree of conflict in respect of 27 Rosebery Avenue. However, that is considered to be sort of outweighed by obviously the support of further development for this existing cultural tourism sporting facility. But yes, going back to your question, yes, the applicant did conduct a sunlight daylight assessment, and that's formed part of that wider overall consideration.
Anything else with respect to residential amenity? So where next? Go to Councillor Chaplin, please.
Thank you. So I want to just touch on the the affordable housing. It wasn't mentioning social housing, the affordable housing, because it seemed to me that it was a massive drop from 51 units that we should be asking for to 31,000 and something, nearly £32,000 as a contribution. And that, yeah, I understand viability, and there was an independent assessment, but it seems to me that the balance is always, if a proposal is brought to us that is not viable, if it provides the social housing that we would like, according to local plan part 1, then we give way, and it's never that the plan then has to be changed. I know we have to decide on the plans that's in front of us now, but just seems a massive difference. So I was interested really whether it seemed a very specific sum, £31,917, to be going towards affordable housing or homelessness and the other things that that's going towards. So I was interested where it came from, and I realised, got the calculator out, that it came from the fact that every other request that had been made for funds got exactly what they wanted from. The applicant said they could afford 1.25 million. So those values were taken away from 1.25 million, and what was left was £31,917, which seems to me like that puts so affordable housing right at the bottom of any priority, that you put everything else in. We've looked at allotments, we've looked at playgrounds, they've all got exactly the amount of money they want, but what's left, which isn't very much, is what goes to the social housing. So I was just wondering whether you do ever consider looking at some of the other requests and thinking, well, actually, if the balance is, if the applicant is offering us 1.25 million, can we share it in a different way? I know that the wording of the local plan part 1 makes it easy to make that a target, because it talks about negotiating the number of affordable houses according to financial assessment. But it just seems like this is so obvious in this case that it's come at the bottom of the priority list. So yeah, just wondered if there was where the 1,250,000 seems like a very round number. That didn't come from doing detailed calculations that how much profit do we need from this and how much income will we get from that. That will give us this number. But the 31,917 does. And it just seems a bit of a mismatch.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the first thing to highlight, I suppose, is that when this application last came to planning committee, there was no contribution to affordable housing at all. Obviously, you know, they only could viably afford 700,000 and they were only providing 430,000, and that has obviously now significantly increased since the new viability assessments have been provided. So the viability assessment confirms that they can viably provide 1.25 million. That's been independently assessed by someone that we have employed. In terms of the way that's been split up, obviously we have contribution requests from people like education, NHS, both are very important things to consider, and would be, you know, the increase in residential apartments in the area would directly impact those services. So that's why we have apportioned, you know, the amount requested to those. I would refer you to paragraph 607 of the committee report, which goes into detail about the affordable housing SPD. And situations, you know, like this, where we've got 1.25 million contributions, we've got the development cost, the planning obligations that have been requested, and then what's left. You know, if affordable housing is provided on site, and, you know, taking into consideration the developer return, that may make the scheme unviable. Whereas the affordable housing SPD accepts that a commuted sum can make a scheme, you know, viable. So that's why that has happened, and it's in accordance with that policy that we have. So I would refer you to that explanation in the report.
Yeah, so I get that. I just feel that we're being taken a bit as fools, that the applicant knows that RBC expects 30% of affordable housing. They've come up with a proposal which is unviable with 30% of affordable housing. It won't have taken the assessor, the independent assessor, to realise that it was something like £5 million that it would have cost to have had their 51 units. So they must have, well, either they made the decision that we're going to put forward a proposal that's going to be unviable with those number of affordable housing, or somebody's not very good at their job if they missed £5 million that is not going to be there in their profits. So yeah, I mean, for all the reasons we've talked about, this is a brilliant scheme, and I can't wait for it to be done. I walk along there loads, and it will be a massive thing for West Bridgford. I just wish that it would have fewer things that are going to make people cross, because it would be good if it had the whole community behind it, if everybody who lived around the football stadium was for it, was going to put up with the inconvenience of the building work, because they were all wanting it to go ahead. And I just think there are things like this that maybe could have been done better. If only people had been talked to about it, it would have been a much happier way of doing it.
Thank you. So anybody else have any comments or questions about the affordable? If not, after we hear, we'll move on to another area potentially.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate that the viability assessment that the applicant submitted was independently assessed as part of this process. So it wasn't sort of, I suppose, just taken out the air. I just wanted to clarify that it has gone through quite a lengthy process in terms of sort of the viability assessor, the independent one, liaising with the applicant's viability person as well to reach that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, please.
Can I just say on the affordable housing, I do agree with Councillor Chaplin. I think how the, 1.25 million was assessed as being the viable contribution all over, and how it's been divided up, leaves crumbs for affordable housing. And I agree with Councillor Chaplin on that point. But if we finished on that one, I have got a couple of others that.
I think we have finished on that one. Other than to say, it's the charter, paragraph 607 of the report is, quite instructive, isn't it? And there's a lot of different areas in which contributions are sought to make the scheme more acceptable. If we've learned anything from the first part of our discussion tonight, we certainly wouldn't want any money less going to transport, for example. So I think it's recognised that that's challenging. But yes, let's move on to a different area.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it depends what they're going to spend it on, whether they're going to spend it, doesn't it, as far as the transport is concerned. But we're moving on to other areas. Okay, so I've got two. The emergency planning officer commented about getting people out in the case of flood. Has that one been resolved? Thank you.
Yep, so we do have a condition, condition 9, which requires the submission of a flood evacuation plan.
Okay, and who signs that off?
Well, that would be a discharge of condition application to the Borough Council, and we would obviously consult the relevant bodies as part of that process.
Okay, thank you. And the last one I've got is perhaps not very big. Bin stores and collection for the residential. I haven't seen that anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, so we would refer you to condition 48, which requires a waste management plan, and it explicitly requires details of bin storage areas. And again, that would be dealt with under a discharge of condition application, and relevant consultees will be consulted as part of that.
Would anybody like to either introduce a new area for us to discuss or go back on anything that we've already covered? No? Okay. Councillor Mason?
I'm not wanting to go back particularly. If there are no others, I would like to propose that we support the recommendation.
Okay, we have that seconded. And Councillor Calvert, yes.
Before we go to the vote, I'd be grateful if I could hear some wording for the informative about setting up a local group to liaise with the applicant. Okay. Thank you.
And just while they're doing that, we're doing that. I get the sense that there'll be general agreement for that the subject to exact wording, but the general principle of that informative being a good idea.
Yeah, so we can do something like, it is recommended that the applicant makes a community liaison group and discusses this with the group in preparation of providing the updated travel plan. Yeah, and just before you move any recommendation, can we also just clarify that we're accepting, whether we are accepting the late item recommendation of changing the wording of the condition, just to remind people of that.
So speak now or forever hold your peace. Anybody got any final things to say before we move to a vote? We've had this proposed and seconded. I think Councillor Ellis has seconded, so I think we're ready to go then, aren't we? So all those in favour of the recommendation. That's unanimous. So the decision of the council is that the planning permission be granted subject to the conditions as per the recommendation in the report. We haven't got the planning appeals item, with this being a sort of special meeting. So in that case, declare the meeting closed at 7:45. Thank you.